The morning of the SATs, my stepmom drugged me. Turns out, during the test, the whole exam hall heard my sister's screams. She burst out of the bathroom, clothes a mess, totally panicked. This year's math section was still brutal. The classroom was dead silent, except for the scratch, scratch, scratch of pencils on paper. About 10 minutes later, a blood-curdling scream came from the direction of the restrooms. Help! Bugs. So many bugs. Pretty much everyone looked out the window. My brainiac sister, Gabby, was tearing down the hallway, hair flying, looking like a crazy person. The hall monitors rushed to stop Gabby and asked what was wrong. Gabby's face was twisted in terror. She pointed at the bathroom, just repeating over and over, "Bugs, bugs." A couple of teachers stayed with Gabby while the others headed to the restroom. It got quiet outside. The proctor reminded us, "Focus on your tests, don't worry about others." I picked up my pencil and kept on calculating. It hit me like a flash. Bugs. Oh right. I almost forgot. That was my doing. That morning my stepmom, for the first time ever, made me milk and a sandwich. She even toasted to me and Gabby, wishing us success on our exams and bright futures. Turns out, there was something wrong with the milk. During the English exam, right after I finished the basic questions, it felt like my insides were poisoned. The pain was so bad I almost passed out. Cold sweat poured out of me. The proctor asked, "Miss, are you okay?" I shook my head, one hand on my lower stomach. "I'm fine, I just need a few minutes." The teacher looked at me, concerned. I gritted my teeth, feeling a bulge and a tremor under my palm. That was my bonded poison creature. It lay dormant below my navel, vibrating and sending out dense, intricate patterns. It was detoxifying me in its own unique way. Every muscle, bone, and blood vessel in my body felt like it was being pierced by tiny fibers. It lasted for about 5 or 6 minutes. By the time the pain stopped, my clothes were soaked with sweat. I looked like I'd just been pulled out of a lake. The proctor asked me again, "Are you sure you don't need to go to the hospital?" I had already wiped the sweat from my palms with a tissue and started answering questions. Based on how long it took the poison to detoxify me, I knew the poison my stepmom gave me was strong enough to kill. So, after the English exam, she was standing at the school gate, looking at me in shock. I sweetly linked my arm with hers, and then during lunch, I placed a poison on her daughter without a second thought. Yes, I'm a poison user. More accurately, my mom was a poison user. I just inherited her bonded poison, and learned a little bit about raising poison from the parchment scroll she left behind. The first time I encountered a poison, I was 6. My mom died suddenly. From home to the hospital, then to the crematorium, it was just me and my dad. As her body was being put into the incinerator, a bump suddenly appeared on my mom's wrist. It twitched slightly, then turned into a golden light that shot towards my forehead, right between my eyes. I asked my dad if he saw the bump and the golden light on Mom's hand. He said he didn't and told me not to overthink it. Later, back home, I looked in the mirror and found a small hole right between my eyebrows. It was about the size of a needle mark from a shot at the doctor's office. I was little then, and my understanding was limited. All I could imagine was that the golden light was from a fairy. I thought I was definitely going to turn into a little fairy, but everyone else thought I was possessed or had seen something evil. They said my dad shouldn't have taken me to the crematorium, that kids are vulnerable to bad influences, stuff like that. My dad got really angry and yelled at me, telling me to stop talking nonsense. He said if I kept it up, he'd send me to a mental hospital. I was terrified. I was so scared my dad wouldn't want me anymore. That year, before Mom was even gone a week, my stepmom had already moved into our house, bringing her daughter with her. That year, I clearly understood that I had another name from then on. Dead weight. It seemed like my mom didn't have any relatives. All our family relatives were from my dad's and stepmom's sides. They, just like the neighbors, loved to ask me one question. Now that your mom's gone, your dad will only love your sister. What will you do? Maybe they didn't mean any harm, they just found it amusing to tease me. I went from bawling my eyes out while they laughed, to later smiling brightly and answering without hesitation. I like my sister too. When my answer became boring, they gradually stopped asking. My early maturity, or you could say my second face, started back then. That winter, stepmom took me and Gabby to an amusement park. We had just gotten off the carousel when Gabby said she needed to go to the bathroom. Stepmom told me to wait right there for her, saying she'd bring Gabby back after the bathroom. But they didn't come back. I stood there, waiting and waiting, and waiting. I waited until the amusement park started to empty out, until the sun went down, until all the rides stopped. I was hungry, thirsty, and cold. I finally understood. I'd been abandoned. That night, I walked back home. Our house was far from the amusement park. It took me over 2 hours to walk. I didn't have any money, so I couldn't take a bus. I didn't dare cry, afraid kidnappers would grab me. I remember a firefly stayed with me the whole time. It kept flying ahead of me, its tail glowing with a golden light. I thought it was Mom's spirit. She was poisoning me home. Many years later, I realized that was my bonded poison. It was past 9 p.m. when I got to our apartment building. The living room lights were off, only the master bedroom light was on. I used my key to open the door and tiptoed inside. Gabby was already asleep. My dad and stepmom were in bed talking. "What's wrong with you? You can't even watch one kid. Aren't you afraid of people gossiping?" I just took Gabby to the bathroom. I told Angie again and again not to wander off. But when we came out, she was gone. I dragged Gabby around looking for her at least 10 times. We couldn't find her anywhere. Seriously, how can that kid be so much trouble? The two of them grumbled for a while longer. I didn't hear any worry in their voices, only them discussing how to handle other people's questions. And there was even a hint of relief that having one less child would save money, time, and energy. My heart felt like it had plunged into an ice cellar. She really did it on purpose. And he was happy to see it happen. I curled up in my small room and cried suppressedly all night, fear filling my heart. I was a motherless child. I was terrified they would abandon me again. That was it. I had to be good. The next morning, before anyone else was up, I went to the kitchen to make porridge. Little me stood by the stove, constantly stirring with a spoon, afraid it would burn. Once the porridge was ready, I took out some pickled vegetables, chopped them, and added MSG and sesame oil. Then I boiled 3 eggs. That was the first time I ever cooked. I burned my hand. I remember how surprised they looked when they got up and saw me. They asked me where I'd been yesterday, and when I'd gotten back. I said I had a stomach ache, and went to the bathroom too. When I came out, I couldn't see them, so I looked everywhere until the park closed, and then I walked back. Stepmom said, "That's what happens when people wander off looking for each other. A wild goose chase." She told me that if something like that happened again, I should stay put and not run around. She even said I'd scared her to death. I obediently agreed and told her I was sorry. For the next few years, I made breakfast every day, and I did the sweeping and laundry too. While Gabby danced around in princess dresses, I wore an apron, afraid of getting in their way. I tried to eat less and do more. Stepmom was very pleased. "This dead weight your ex-wife left behind isn't so bad after all. We're saving money on a maid." My dad was pleased too. "Yeah, she's pretty sensible. The only problem is she's too skinny. People will think we're abusing her." I looked at my perfectly doll-like sister, then at my own sallow, skinny reflection in the mirror. I felt so ugly. Stepmom called my name. "Angie, from now on, you eat Gabby's leftovers so they don't go to waste." Tears instantly welled up in my eyes. All these years I'd done the chores, slept in the storage corner on the balcony, living like a dog. But I wasn't a dog. For the first time, I said no. Stepmom looked like she'd heard something hilarious. She pinched my chin. "What? You feel wronged? Think about the kids in Africa. They don't even have food to eat." I thought she had a point, but I couldn't agree. I gritted my teeth, tears making my eyes red and swollen. That night, I dreamed of the firefly with the golden glowing tail. "Mom, is that you?" The firefly flew around the storage room once and landed on a pile of messy boxes in the corner. The golden light flashed twice, then disappeared. A sudden inspiration hit me. I rushed over and rummaged through the boxes, and I actually found a parchment notebook. It was my mom's diary. Her handwriting was elegant, every line of her writing flowed like a gentle stream. By the moonlight, I greedily absorbed the warmth my mother had left behind. I didn't want to wake up from this dream. The next day, when the alarm clock rang, I opened my eyes and found myself sitting against the glass door of the balcony, clutching the very same parchment notebook from my dream. For a moment, I was stunned. Dream and illusion, reality and fiction. Was it dreaming he was a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming it was? But no matter what, reality was a life without love. I shoved the parchment notebook into my backpack and rushed to the kitchen to make breakfast for the family. From that day on, a small flame ignited in my heart, like Cinderella knowing she had a fairy godmother. Mom's diary was strange. Very little of it was about love or family. Most of it was about insects and spells. Those symbols and words I couldn't understand looked like magic from another world. One night, stepmom and Gabby ganged up on me. It was because I'd scored 1 point higher than Gabby on a math unit test. They thought I didn't deserve it. How could a kid who did chores all day and didn't even have a desk score better than a child who only focused on studying and even had tutors? A coat hanger lashed against my body again and again. I curled up in the corner of the balcony, my arms and back covered in bruises. That night, I was in too much pain to sleep. Maybe it was hatred or some other emotion, but I chanted a spell over the eggs in the basket. The next day, the boiled eggs were filled with tiny dead insects. Stepmom and Gabby screamed. Gabby fell off her chair. My dad complained. What kind of eggs did you buy? How did they get so many bugs? Stepmom ran to the basket, looked, and screamed again. Some of the eggshells had been chewed open by the bugs, which were crawling all over them. I was terrified too. When I boiled the eggs that morning, they had looked perfectly fine. Stepmom took the eggs to the store, yelled at the shopkeeper, and got a refund. I was deeply uneasy. I couldn't shake the feeling that the bugs were connected to the spell I chanted. For a long time after that, I didn't even look at Mom's parchment notebook. I was afraid it was Pandora's box. Until, after the middle school entrance exams, I ticked Gabby off again. She was a top student. Years of tutoring kept her in the top 3 of her class. I managed my scores to stay somewhere between 5th and 10th. Although she didn't like me, since I was still below her, things were relatively peaceful. But for the entrance exams, I went all out. I wanted to try for a scholarship. When the results came out, we both got into the best high school in the city. My total score was over 50 points higher than hers, and I got the school's top scholarship. Full tuition and living expenses covered, plus $70,000 cash. Gabby and stepmom were practically spitting mad, but Dad couldn't stop grinning. He said I'd made him proud, that I hadn't spent a dime on tutoring all these years, and now I was even earning money. He even mentioned my mom, saying she was a top student too, and his lucky star. After Mom got together with him, his business just got bigger and smoother. I blurted out, "Then why did you leave Mom?" My dad froze, not expecting me to ask that. Stepmom chimed in, "Lucky star? Your mom was just a sickly burden. It was good enough she didn't drag your dad down." I felt like I'd grown some wings, because I retorted directly, "Still better than you. After you married Dad, his business went downhill every day." What I said was true. Stepmom jumped up like a scalded cat, saying I had a potty mouth. My dad played peacemaker and unilaterally announced I would get my own bedroom from then on. My study, I'll have someone convert it into a bedroom for you tomorrow. This was 9 years after I started sleeping on the balcony, finally having my own bedroom again. That summer, my dad was like a proud peacock, showing off everywhere that both his daughters got into a top high school, and one of them even won the biggest scholarship. He took us on a trip to Thailand and booked a large private villa. It was supposed to be a happy occasion, but my dear sister decided she wanted to kill me. At night, I was in the swimming pool practicing diving when she suddenly closed the pool cover. By the time I realized, not only were the lights off in the pool area, but the door was locked too. I banged on the pool cover, shouting again and again, "Hey, is anyone there?" No one answered. I remembered, my dad and stepmom had gone to an adult show. It was just me and Gabby left in the villa. In the enclosed space, the only air left was between the water surface and the cover. The air was thinning out bit by bit. I tried to move as little as possible. I don't know how long it was before my breathing quickened, my body felt incredibly tired, and then gradually breathing became difficult. Suffocation was creeping up on me. I thought I was probably most likely going to die. I thought of the little match girl. In my despair, I thought I saw Mom. She was waving at me. I decided to stop struggling. I spread my arms and let myself sink into the water. The moment water flooded my lungs, a searing heat, like a raging fire, shot up from my lower abdomen to the point between my eyebrows, with unstoppable force. My body followed that fire, leaping out of the water like a fish. A golden light burst from my forehead, like a shooting star, and crashed against the pool cover. Bang! 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 The cover quickly developed a crack, then it spiderwebbed, and finally, a large piece shattered with a crash. Air rushed in. The golden light, initially as dazzling as the sun, grew dimmer and dimmer, until it was faint and flickering. Wasn't this the firefly that had stayed with me, flying home from the park all those years ago? The one that led me to Mom's parchment scroll. I watched it fly out through the opening and land on the edge of the pool. The golden light on its tail flickered weakly twice. Then it went out. Panicked, I ignored my violent coughing, grabbed the edge of the opening with one hand, and pulled myself out. The sharp plastic edge cut my skin, and blood dripped down. I crawled next to it and carefully cupped it in my hands. Only then did I realize it wasn't a firefly, but a winged silkworm. It was pure lustrous white. I thought for a moment, then placed it on the bleeding scrape on my arm. There was no reason, just an unconscious instinct, as if this was what I was supposed to do. After a moment, its head twitched. Then, it vanished. But I knew it was there. Just like for so many years, it had merged with my body again. I slowly stood up. My body was exhausted, but my heart felt like a burning flame. Still in my soaking wet swimsuit, I walked towards Gabby's bedroom. Blood and water mixed, dripping from my limbs, leaving footprints on the floor. Gabby was playing video games. I kicked open her door, grabbed a handful of her hair, yanked hard, and dragged her downstairs without a second thought. Gabby was caught off Poisonard. Her feet scrambled on the floor, and besides screaming, "Angie, are you crazy?" she had no way to fight back. There was a decorative diamond pattern mirror on the hallway wall. I saw myself, radiating pure malice. I looked as ferocious as a demon crawled out of hell. In that moment, I just wanted her dead. After all these years of living under someone else's roof, I had never, ever wanted her dead as much as I did right then. I quickly shoved Gabby into the swimming pool. She struggled desperately. I desperately pushed her underwater. "Help, help me. No one's going to save you. You chose this moment. Didn't you want to kill me? Now you get a taste of it. Angie, I was wrong. You spare me. No, I'm going to kill you. Kill you." Actually, I don't remember much about what happened later that day. According to my dad, when he and stepmom came back, both Gabby and I had fainted by the pool, and there was blood everywhere. They didn't call the police. They had a doctor come to the house to treat us and bandage my wounds. 2 days later, we went back home. The Thailand trip ended on a sour note. For the next 3 years, Gabby and I were like fire and water. Whether at school or at home, we couldn't stand each other. Some classmates who knew about our relationship jokingly called us two tigers on one mountain, meaning we couldn't coexist. I found it ridiculous. How could someone like her, who had to grind through practice problems just to barely be considered a top student, even be compared to me? During the last mock exam of senior year, I did something crazy. I turned in a blank English paper. My rank in the entire grade dropped from the top 10 to below 100, but my total score was still a few points higher than hers. I laughed so arrogantly. See that? That's the difference. Even if I give you a head start, you can't catch up. Ha 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 ha. Still dreaming of getting into a top-tier university? Dream on. That probably pushed her over the edge, leading her and her mom to poison me on the morning of the SATs. A lethal dose. They didn't just want to ruin my SATs, they wanted me dead. How to retaliate? How far should I take it? I thought about it seriously. Mom's parchment scroll clearly stated, "New clan rule. Outside the Great Mountains, obey the law, especially criminal law." So, I didn't go for a killing blow. I just casually placed a small poison on Gabby during lunch, one that would give her stomach cramps and diarrhea during the afternoon exam. The bugs she saw weren't real, they were hallucinations. That's why the hall monitors wouldn't find anything in the restroom. Gabby didn't believe it and followed them to the restroom. She screamed again, completely hysterical. An ambulance took Gabby to the hospital. I couldn't help but laugh. Confucius didn't talk about strange phenomena or spirits. If she could have just pushed through it, and then overcome the illusion of every word on the paper being made of bugs, she still could have taken the test. Even if she couldn't get into a top public university, she could probably still get into a decent state college. The whole family was taking care of Gabby. I felt like the world suddenly became peaceful. I focused completely on finishing the rest of my exams. Only then did I hypocritically go to the hospital to visit my dear sister. She had already been transferred from the city hospital to the best hospital in the state. She'd had countless tests, and specialists and professors had consulted on her case. But no one could figure out what was wrong. Her physical functions were perfectly fine. The most likely diagnosis was a psychological illness. After all, every year a certain number of high school students experience stress reactions due to various psychological issues. I stayed by her side, sighing and looking worried along with my dad and stepmom, pretending to be a deeply caring sister. Maybe I overdid it. That evening, I was sitting in the hallway eating hospital food when stepmom snapped at me. "Angie, did you do this?" I jumped. How could I possibly do something like that? Stepmom thought for a moment. I couldn't tell if she believed me or not, but she walked away with a hostile look on her face. My dad came over and sat next to me. "Don't blame your Aunt Nina, she's just too worried about your sister. By the way, how did your exams go? Harvard or Yale should be no problem, right?" I smiled. Harvard or Yale? I never even considered them. After the trip to Thailand 3 years ago, I was no longer afraid of those insects. When I got back, I started seriously studying the parchment scroll Mom left me. From then on, I had only one goal: South China Agricultural University. I wanted to study insects. My smile misled my dad. He carefully selected a photo of me, then found pictures of the gates of both Harvard and Yale, blocked stepmom's relatives, and posted on his social media. "Daughter, Dad's waiting to celebrate your success." I glanced at him and said politely, "Is this the legendary ultimate middle-aged brag?" My dad didn't even look up, completely absorbed in the flood of likes on his post. You bet. This poor middle-aged man. Over the past few years, his business had been shrinking, and he was earning less and less. The only thing he could show off was his 2 brainy daughters. Now there was only me. Gabby's hallucinations were getting pretty bad. Rice noodles, things like that, they all looked like bugs to her. She knocked over several bowls every day. The fine hairs on her skin also looked like bugs. If she stared, her body seemed to be covered in writhing maggots. She'd even pulled out clumps of her own hair. She was on the verge of a breakdown every day, either frantically throwing and smashing things or obsessively scrubbing her skin. Ah, bugs, so many bugs. Go away, go away. No one wanted to share a hospital room with her. Other patients and their families on the same floor secretly called her the psycho. The doctors talked to my dad and stepmom several times, recommending she be transferred to a more specialized hospital, a psychiatric hospital. Stepmom refused. She couldn't accept her daughter becoming a psychiatric patient. My dad, on the other hand, didn't really care. He was the first one in our family to give up on her. While I was still diligently playing the part of the devoted sister, he had already lost his patience. All these years, I bought her whatever she wanted, spent so much money on tutoring, all hoping she'd get into a good college and make me proud. You tell me, how did she end up like this? Do you know what people outside are saying? That old fool's younger daughter has gone crazy. It's karma. Sometimes I think it's karma too. If I hadn't insisted on divorcing Cindy back then, and been so determined to marry you, Gabby wouldn't have been so spoiled that she couldn't even handle the SATs. I was standing around the corner of the hallway, in a spot where they couldn't see me. I listened quietly as my dad lost his temper. Stepmom just kept crying and crying. She didn't dare tell my dad that she had poisoned me on the morning of the SATs, but she accurately poisoned that Gabby's illness was related to me. She said that every illness has warning signs, but Gabby had none. She was sure someone had maliciously harmed her. My dad wouldn't listen to her explanation. As he was leaving, he just threw out one sentence. I'll give you 3 more days. After 3 days, she must be sent to the psychiatric hospital. Our money doesn't grow on trees. Stepmom slumped onto a plastic chair. I walked out from around the corner. When she saw me, it was like she got a shot of adrenaline. She lunged at me, grabbing my throat, her eyes so red they looked like they were about to drip blood. Angie, tell me the truth, was it you? What kind of poison did you give her? I tilted my head back, stretching my neck a little to give her a better grip, while glancing at the hospital security camera. I didn't do anything, I said. Aunt Nina, if you suspect me, you can call the police. The dishes and cups from the morning of the SATs haven't been washed. If I really did something, the police would definitely find out. I was very calm, but her pupils suddenly constricted, and her voice dropped. Do you know something? I feigned confusion. Should I know something? Aunt Nina, I don't understand what you're saying. Stepmom gritted her back teeth, her eyes full of unwillingness. I didn't know if the police could find out about the poison, but I knew she wouldn't dare call them. Just like what happened in Thailand 3 years ago. If they called the police, the first thing to be investigated would be their attempted murder. 3 days later, my dad came to the hospital. The original plan was for him to make sure stepmom transferred Gabby to the other hospital. But unexpectedly, in front of everyone, stepmom dropped to her knees before my dad. She begged my dad to give Gabby one more chance, saying Gabby was her only daughter, the apple of her eye. She wanted to go to the region to find a local healer, just as a last resort. Trying anything, even if it seems hopeless. She promised that if it still didn't work, she would send Gabby to the psychiatric hospital without another word as soon as they got back. My dad's brow was furrowed with anger. He hated it when his family didn't obey him. A lot of people were watching. My dad cared about his reputation. He was in a bind and finally agreed. I watched the spectacle for a bit, then slipped through the crowd, helped stepmom up, and feigned filial piety. Aunt Nina, I'll go with you. Stepmom's gaze was sharp and vicious. How big was the region? The 100,000 mountains. It covered parts of Yunnan, Poisonizu, Hunan, Poisonangdong, and also areas in Sichuan and Chongwendi. My dad used to be in the medicinal herb business in his early years. My mom accompanied him to many places, especially in Poisonizu. Later, he switched to the construction industry, and his connections in the herb business gradually faded. To get Gabby treated and fulfill stepmom's wish, my dad started calling his old contacts again, trying to find a way to consult a great poison master. I sat cross-legged on the nearby sofa, pretending to read but actually eavesdropping on my dad's calls. Not Cindy's child, it's my current wife's. Cindy? Oh, she got very sick and passed away. You don't know anyone? I thought you might have some connections, old friend. Cindy? What could she do? Besides, she's been gone for so many years. Not Cindy's child. Oh, you're white? Not familiar with the black then. Almost every call mentioned my mom. And almost every call ended with a polite refusal to help my dad. The only exceptions. One suggested my dad go directly into the mountains to search, saying that if he was sincere enough, he would eventually find someone. Another asked me to take the phone, and immediately asked when my mom passed away and how. I said my mom had been gone for 12 years, that she had been bedridden for many years, and then suddenly passed away one day. The person's voice on the other end choked up a bit. After a moment, she said, "Tell your dad I can take them there, but whether the person will treat her or not, that'll depend on luck." I relayed the message word for word. My dad took a deep drag from his cigarette and exhaled heavily. His face was dark, and when he looked at stepmom, his eyes were full of impatience. It was the same look he used to give my mom when she was sick in bed, many years ago. Unlike my mom, stepmom didn't care at all about my dad's mood. She had already made her choice back when she knelt in the hospital. She was busy packing clothes, toiletries, power banks, and charging cables. Bring more cash. Yes, and gold. I'll go buy some more first thing tomorrow morning. In the mountains, cash might not always work, but gold will. Money makes the world go round. Gabby will definitely be okay. She muttered on and on. This woman, though vicious, was genuinely good to her own daughter. The next day we set off. We drove there. More than 10 hours later, our car stopped at a shop selling local mountain products somewhere in Poisonizu. A couple came out to greet us. They were wearing traditional clothing and were about my dad's age. The man's last name was Wang, and the woman's was He. The woman was the one who had asked me to take the phone call the day before. She told me to call her Ms. Wendy. The couple was very warm towards me, saying they had held me when I was just a baby. Ms. Wendy took my hand, her thumb gently rubbing my wrist. In an instant, I felt my bonded poison stir within me. I snatched my hand back and stared at her sharply. Her eyes immediately reddened. She said, "Child, don't be afraid. Your mother and I were friends." Friends? I didn't even trust my own dad. How could I possibly believe this woman who claimed to be my mom's friend? I offered a polite smile but couldn't help taking half a step back. Ms. Wendy didn't seem to mind. She sat next to Mr. Wang, and while talking to my dad, she would glance at me from time to time. Her expression, like she wanted to say something but couldn't, was strangely moving. Mr. Wang said that the people have many branches. Outsiders mostly hear about the white and black, but in fact, there are also flower, green, blue, red, and others. He and Ms. Wendy were both green, and they primarily gathered herbs for healing. The great poison master we were looking for, the poison woman, was black. The black are relatively few in number and live deeper in the mountains. For many years, the green and black haven't gotten along well. They could take us to find the person tomorrow, but they couldn't get too close. They could only point us in the right direction from afar. My dad repeatedly said he understood. Stepmom impatiently asked, "Based on your experience, does it look like my daughter has been afflicted by a poison?" Mr. Wang said, "It doesn't just look like it. It is 100%. Stepmom and my dad exchanged a look, their eyes full of confusion. They didn't understand how Gabby, living in a big city, could have been cursed with a poison by someone from the deep mountains. "You just said the green gather herbs for healing. Can you treat this poison?" "I brought money. Any amount." Stepmom clutched her phone tightly. Mr. Wang looked at Ms. Wendy. It seemed like there might be room for discussion. "We can't treat it," Ms. Wendy said decisively. She paused, then added, "It's not that I don't want to earn money, but poison are very complicated. If the technique is wrong, or the wrong medicine is used, the poison insect can burrow into the brain. That would be a fate worse than death." Stepmom's face turned deathly pale with fright. Ms. Wendy added, "Also, the poison woman is very particular. Tomorrow, when you ask for her help, you must be respectful and sincere." I suspected Ms. Wendy was being deliberately mysterious, because the poison I placed on Gabby was a very low-level one. So low-level that if Gabby's willpower was strong enough to ignore the fake insects, she could basically live a normal life. And Ms. Wendy, someone who could make my poison stir just by touching my hand, how could she possibly not be able to break such a low-level poison? Sure enough, she came to find me that night. We were staying at a local poisonist's house. There was a road in front and a small hill behind. My room faced the hill. In the middle of the night, I couldn't sleep. I got up, opened the window, and saw Ms. Wendy standing not far away. She was wearing the same dress from daytime, staring straight at me. For a split second, I was terrified. But the sorrow emanating from her was so overwhelming, so heavy it made me want to cry. She beckoned to me, so I left the poisonist's house and went to her side. "The poison on that girl, you placed it?" "Yes. The one inside you, that's your mother's bonded poison. Did you know? I poisoned as much. Are you afraid of it? It saved me." I paused. "More than once." Ms. Wendy smiled. We walked slowly up the hillside. It was summer, supposedly the most active season for insects, yet there wasn't a single chirp around us. Ms. Wendy said, "Your mother and I knew each other since we were little. Her lineage and ours have been at odds for centuries, but we were very close. She was very talented. The clan valued her greatly. It was said she could become the most powerful poison woman of her generation. We studied too. Compulsory education has been around for years, but educational resources in the mountains are poor. Very few make it to high school. Your mother was a genius. A genius by our standards here. She not only got into high school but also into a vocational college. She met your father in college." At this point, Ms. Wendy paused for a long while before continuing. The black are few in number and don't marry outsiders. According to clan rules, your mother had to return after graduating from college. But she fell in love with your father. Women love deeply. To marry your father, she endured great hardship. She almost didn't make it through. They were in the medicinal herb business, so they had more contact with us. I asked her many times if it was worth it. She said it was. I still remember the contented smile on her face. Later, they started the construction business, and then you were born. Contact lessened, and gradually we lost touch. I thought she wanted to cut ties with us. I never expected. Ms. Wendy wiped away a tear. That night, she told me many other things, including, my dad didn't know my mom was black, he thought she was an ordinary orphan. Including, women love deeply. In the black lineage, there's no divorce, only widowhood. Your dad must have cheated. But why wasn't he the one who died? And also including, the poison woman we were going to find tomorrow was actually my maternal grandmother. Cindy's bonded poison is still alive. I poisonous, she doesn't even know Cindy is gone. She's never left these mountains her whole life. She deserves to see who was responsible for her daughter's death. We took Ms. Wendy's small truck into the mountains. We set off just after 5 a.m. Towering mountains stretched endlessly. At 2 p.m., the truck stopped in a mountain pass, and everyone continued on foot. We had to cross another mountain. Get out! What are you doing back here? The voice exploded right next to my ear. Ms. Wendy stopped abruptly. She pointed to a courtyard in the distance. That's the place. I can't go any further. You go on your own. Be careful. Don't eat or touch anything randomly. There's no cell signal here. When you're done, come back to where I parked. There's a signal there. Call me, and I'll come pick you up. My dad's brow was tightly furrowed. He unconsciously touched his chest, over his heart, neither nodding nor shaking his head. Stepmom swallowed hard, clear retreat in her eyes. This is the legendary black. They say you can get cursed just by breathing their air. Gabby, however, shed her earlier dejection and looked at the distant courtyard with anticipation. Mom, let's go quickly. I have a feeling she can cure me. This was the first normal sentence she'd spoken since the math portion of the SATs. Stepmom was greatly encouraged and immediately firmed her resolve. She grabbed Gabby, let's go. My dad and I followed behind them. From a distance, the gate of the courtyard opened. A withered, short poison woman walked out quickly. She wore black clothing, hands on her hips, looking in our direction. Her gaze was too piercing I couldn't make out her expression. I just felt her eyes sweep over us and land on Ms. Wendy. When I looked back, Ms. Wendy was standing rooted to the spot. She stared at the poison woman, tears suddenly falling as if conveying 1,000 unspoken words. Half the mountainside was devoid of insect chirps or bird calls, it was terrifyingly silent. Even the sunlight seemed to have grown colder. The four of us stumbled our way over. Only when we got closer could we see the poison woman's face clearly. It was the first time I had ever seen such a terrifying face. Half of her face was normal, with deep smile lines. The other half was pockmarked and worse, a scar ran from above her eyelid all the way down to her neck. Twisted and winding, like a giant centipede. I was a little scared and hesitated, taking half a step back. Gabby screamed and backed away in fright. Stepmom held her tightly, repeatedly apologizing to the poison woman. I'm sorry. The child is just inexperienced. As we had walked towards her, the poison woman had sized us up countless times. Her eyes seemed to be laced with poison. Who are you and what are you here for? Her voice was still shrill, as if someone was pinching her throat. Stepmom dropped to her knees. My daughter has been cursed with a poison. I begged the great poison master to take a look. As she spoke, she took out the prepared gold from her bag, held it with both hands, and raised it above her head. There were small gold bars, gold nuggets, gold necklaces, pendants, earrings, and rings. They glittered brightly in the sunlight. My dad's face was contorted with the pain of parting with it. The poison woman glanced at it only twice before her gaze fell on my dad. What's your name? Gabby. Who are they to you? My wife and daughter. A strange sound rumbled in the poison woman's throat. She smiled, her face expressionless. Like a broken old bellows wheezing. The sunlight chilled a degree. Only then did the poison woman gesture for us to follow her into the courtyard. She walked very slowly, a completely different person from the one who had strode out of the courtyard so imposingly earlier. Her steps were even unsteady. I thought, she must have poisonous. Her daughter had run away for love, only to be cruelly betrayed. She had lost her daughter many years ago. On impulse, I rushed forward in a few quick steps to support her. "Grandma, let me help you." She turned to look at me, her dry, claw-like fingers gripping my arm. Her voice was like metal scraping metal. "You're not afraid of me?" "I am scared. But Ms. Wendy said you're my grandmother. My poison creature feels very calm here too." I gritted my back teeth, trying hard not to look at her terrifying face. "What's your name?" Her voice softened a little. "Angie," I also replied softly. She just hummed, her tone betraying no emotion. She quickly stepped over the threshold. In the courtyard, there was a large red rooster, head held high, chest puffed out. Its feathers were glossy and exceptionally vibrant. Its comb was huge and red, as if soaked in blood. Its black claws strode across the yard, making an occasional creaking sound underfoot. The creaking was because the ground was littered with the remains of poisonous creatures like scorpions, spiders, toads, and geckos, mostly scorpions. Stepmom and Gabby supported each other, their eyes darting around the courtyard, every step taken with trepidation. My dad followed behind. Slam. The courtyard gate slammed shut. The four of us whipped around in shock. Coiled on the gate was a huge black snake. It opened its mouth wide, flicking its tongue poison, its long tail thrashing. Looking around, we saw countless snakes coiled under the eaves and on the roof beams, red, green, white, black. Without exception, all had poisonler heads, and every pair of eyes glowed with a sinister light. Not just poisonous, but lethally so. At least 100 of them. Even more terrifying, snakes were continuously slithering out from the roof beams, more and more of them. I suddenly realized, this was a trap to kill us all. Ms. Wendy, ever since she got Dad's call and found out Mom was dead, must have planned this. The temperature in the courtyard seemed to drop 10 degrees. Stepmom and Gabby shivered simultaneously and edged closer to my dad. "Where's that rooster from before?" Stepmom stammered, shivering. "Gone. I watched it leave." "Why did it leave?" Stepmom's voice rose a few pitches. She turned to grab my dad. My dad stood frozen like a statue. His eyes were wide and bulging, staring at the wall of the main hall. His body trembled like a leaf, and his lips quivered. "Cindy, who is Cindy to you?" he shrieked at the poison woman. Stepmom followed his gaze. On the wall hung several rows of portraits. The last one was my mom. Her face turned even uglier than my dad's. She shoved him hard in the chest, grabbed Gabby, and tried to run out. "We don't want treatment anymore. We're not getting treated. Let us go." They only managed 3 steps before countless venomous snakes blocked their escape, flicking their tongue poisons at them. Too late. The wheezing sound came again, followed by the poison woman's sharp cry. "Cindy was my daughter. A daughter of our black family. We've never been bullied like this before." In the courtyard, from every crack and crevice, a rustling sound arose. Scorpions, spiders, toads, geckos, centipedes, ants. They poured out as if they were free. They skirted around me and the poison woman, swarming towards the other 3 in an encircling movement. This was far more terrifying than Gabby's earlier hallucinations. She screamed, tore at her hair, stomped her feet, her face contorted with terror. My dad and stepmom were much calmer. They both dropped to their knees and kowtowed desperately to the poison woman, their heads thudding against the ground. "Mom, I was wrong. I betrayed Cindy. Please spare me. Grandma, it was this scumbag. He deceived your daughter, and then he deceived me. He's the one who did all the bad things." They were truly terrified. Their foreheads hit the ground, drawing blood. The venomous insects, smelling the blood, became even more excited. They crawled all over them, opening their mouths wide to bite. The 3 of them collapsed on the ground, writhing in agony. Women love deeply, but most men in the world are heartless. Our black clan, on the wedding day, places a heart-linking poison on the husband. If the man betrays his vows, he will be devoured by 100 insects and die. You didn't die. There's only one possibility. Cindy killed the mother poison of the heart-linking poison before yours could activate. After that, her health would have deteriorated rapidly. All of you deserve to die. The poison woman grew more agitated as she spoke, her hands flailing, wishing she could strangle my dad with her own hands. My dad, in his desperation, had a sudden idea. He suddenly pointed at me. Her name is Angie. She's Cindy's daughter, your own granddaughter. She's only 19, just got into college. If I die, there'll be no one to support her. The poison woman's flailing hands slowed a bit, and the insects on the ground also calmed down. My dad and the others were already covered in welts, large dark bruises overlapping smaller ones. They were clearly severely poisoned. I'll give you one way to live, the poison woman said. 22 years ago, to marry you, Cindy crawled out of this mountain of insects and sea of snakes. It took her over half a year to recover. If you can crawl out of here, I'll spare you. Unexpectedly, my dad and the others actually managed to crawl out. I was puzzled. With so many venomous creatures biting them like that, how could they still be alive? Even more puzzling, the black poison woman's power clearly didn't match the legends. But I didn't dare ask. Questioning someone's power is best left unsaid. The poison woman, no grandmother. Grandmother had me stay for 2 days. She asked why I placed the poison on Gabby, and also about my life over the years. I told her everything truthfully. 2 days later, she said I could leave and told me to live a good life from then on. She said she could have removed my mother's bonded poison from me, but since it could protect me, it was better to leave it. She said that when my mother left, she had actually already been expelled from the clan, so I didn't have to stay bound to the mountains. She said if I missed her, I could come back and visit. A few days later, I returned to Chengdu. What greeted me was the news of the deaths of my dad, stepmom, and my sister. They had a car accident on the way back. My dad had been drinking, the car crashed off the highway, and all 3 died instantly. So, I inherited all the family property and applied to my dream school, South China Agricultural University. I also went to the local police station to change my name. I dropped the Gabby surname. From then on, I was just Angie. Only Angie. One day, I called Ms. Wendy. Ms. Wendy, my dad and the others. Their deaths, were they really an accident? Of course. Another day, I was chatting with my grandmother. Grandma, my dad and the others. Their deaths, were they really an accident? What do you think? The end.